Thank you.
Let's do that again.
Start that again, if you wouldn't mind, Bob.
From the beginning?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call this meeting, the regular meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District to order, and we'll start out with the roll call.
All right, Epstein,
Present.
Schroeder, here, Minituranda, here, Tucker,
Absent.
Thornbrook here.
Okay. Eric, announcements.
When he does finally show up via Zoom, in accordance with Government Code 54953, subsection J2B, Director Tucker is appearing remotely for just cause due to a contagious illness. And if you'd like to make a comment and you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function.
Okay. That sounds great. All right, are there any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? Or the board? Okay, not seeing any. Then next we'll move to comments from the audience, an opportunity to address the board on any non-agenda item. Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Tina.
If you would please go to the podium.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tina Coleman. I'm a longtime resident, and I want to thank you for all that you do here. And I just had a quick question. I've noticed since around this summer, maybe it could have been in the spring, but we weren't here, is that it's really loud in the meadow in terms of the new wastewater. And I was just wondering if that's temporary until it's completed, or maybe that is something that we might want to look at in terms of the level of the noise. I was walking and I recorded it. It's from the far side of the meadow. It's really loud. So I thought I want to be part of that solution, but it's in the morning or the evening. It's lights all you hear. It's like someone parked a running truck by your house. Do you want me to play it or?
Yeah, it's the valves actuating. It's the new valve actuators. We've put mufflers on them and we're in compliance with the sound requirements from Alpine County. We did test it, so we're well under.
Oh, was that recently or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, because this was in the fall where you could hear it across and it was
In the
just
fall,
like.
oh, we muffled them since then.
Oh, okay, because
We
it's,
muffled them about, Rick, correct me, or Brandy, about a month ago, we put those on.
oh, Brandy and I, we were talking, we exchanged emails.
It's still in progress, but a lot of those have been done within the last just few weeks.
Okay.
Okay, in a few weeks, okay, and then more are coming then. Oh, awesome. Thank you.
We'll monitor it, and if a month from now,
No,
would
great.
you let us know what you think?
Yeah, no, great.
Okay.
I hate to be a complainer, but it's.
Yeah, it's okay.
Nice.
Cool. Are there any other comments from the audience or online?
Sandy has her hand up.
Okay. Sandy, floor is yours. Sandy, go ahead.
Sandy?
We're not hearing you, Sandy.
I think you might have a bad connection, Sandy. We're not hearing you.
Okay. Oh, wait.
There you are. Wait, do it. Go now.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to make an announcement that Kirkwood Firewise, every year we have to submit all of our hours and dollars spent for maintaining defensible space. And once again, at the end of this year, we submitted our information, our hours, dollars, and we were recognized again as a Firewise community for 2025. So because it's important to homeowners for insurance, for homeowners insurance, and obviously to keep us safer, I just wanted to let everyone know the certificate of this recognition is on the Kirkwood Firewise website. So you can download it and submit it to your insurance if you need to. That's it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Sandy, and also everyone in the committee that's volunteering their time to do this. It's great.
Definitely.
Okay, any other? Okay, then we move on to written comments from the public. There's one comment from Eric Rickert that we'll discuss in 9F, since it's aligned with that. And that was the only other one that was in the board packet. So we move to adopt the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October 4th, the current consent for claims, and the receivables and shut-off report?
Yes, Dornbrook, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Schroeder, second.
Okay, and we can do voice ones or not?
This will be a roll call.
Okay, so we'll do roll call because we're not all
Okay.
present.
Right.
Okay,
Epstein,
present?
Schroeder.
Yes.
I say.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Are you abstaining or are you?
No, aye. Aye, Métis.
Minutes are on. Aye. Aye. Tucker.
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, good. Then we're ready for the first item, 9A, board elections. So I've been president for 3 years, and Doug is interested in the role. So he and I've been working together for a year, and so I'd like to propose a change in the structure. I would nominate myself for vice president and nominate Doug to be president effective January 1st. That would give me time to finish the president's report. And so I'd like to open that up for discussion.
It's good to me. Yeah.
All right, is
Get some
there,
younger energy in here.
and that's true too, yes.
Get rid of these old guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so is there a second for the
I'll
nomination?
second that.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, then roll call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I welcome this. I welcome this and congratulations to both of you. Doug, could you just comment a little bit on your wish to have the role and your time capacity to fill it? You're gonna,
Sure.
I'd just like to hear that.
Yeah. So Desire is just been an owner now for 4 years and love this community and skied here first time in the 90s. So I really do love Kirkwood, and my family now, which did not exist 20 years ago when I was first here, is now growing up here as well. And so just really love the community and being able to be a part of this from the first days I moved in when Eric was the president, and being able to hear what happens here. I just really enjoy this place, and my professional experience in utilities drew me to this and naturally. So it's been a really nice pleasure to that. And I look forward to the next year where we have some challenging issues to think about with the fire department, especially, and other things to keep this place a place where people can come and enjoy it, and we keep it running as really effectively, efficiently, and cost effectively as we can for them. And my family has made the time for me to be able to commit to this, and I appreciate that very much. To be able to be here in person on these sorts of days, and we'll certainly be meeting with Eric continuously to continue the traditions that I understand Bob has had. Continuously contact with the general manager, and continue to plan on volunteering for the fire department, like I have been for the last 6 or 7 months, and we'll continue all those paths.
Great answer. The district is lucky to have you step up.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, roll call, please.
Certainly. Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder. Aye. Minutes
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. So that will take effect January 1st. And we're on the same committee, so there's no change to the committee structure, which is convenient. Okay, we're now ready to move on to item 9B, and it's my pleasure to introduce Chief Withrow from the Amador Fire Protection District, and also want to recognize that Kaylee Dale is also here from the district. So as we know, we've been looking for quite a while in terms of how we're going to provide fire and emergency safety at Kirkwood, and we received I'll call it a proposal from that how we could become part of the district. So I invited the chief here today because we've all had a lot of questions. So we put together some to start with, but this is an interactive session.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming here today. And let me turn it over
Okay,
to you.
so I'll get to these questions. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Robert Withrow. I live in Jackson, and about a year and a half ago was appointed fire chief to the Amador Fire Protection District. Prior to that, I was a division chief with CAL FIRE. I did 25 years with CAL FIRE, and then I forget how many years at local government prior to that. This is my 33rd year in the fire service, which I can't believe. And I'm feel extremely blessed to have had a career this long, and I still have some energy in me to keep going for a while. So I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the invite. I want to talk a little bit about, I'll get into these questions and any questions you guys may have, but I want to set the stage just a little bit with respect to the lens I'm looking through when I try to assess the threat and what it's going to take to mitigate that here in Kirkwood. Obviously, we'd all like to have fire stations and fire engines on every corner, and that's just not realistic or possible. But there's when I evaluate somewhere for risk, you always look at the potential. Everything we do in the fire service, unlike business, is based on potential, what might happen. And we want to make sure we're putting ourselves and ultimately our community in the best possible position to address that threat. And the way we do that is we look at stuff like response time. How fast can we get resources somewhere to deal with that emergency or whatever may come up? And the other piece of that is our weight of response. So there's a big difference between a fire engine arriving quickly with one person on it versus a fire engine arriving quickly with 3 people on it, right? We're going to get a lot more done with more people. Kirkwood, I'll just be totally transparent, scares me because help is a long ways away, at least in my opinion. I don't live in Kirkwood, I live in Jackson. So for me to feel comfortable, I would want an appropriately staffed engine company here 24/7, 365, and that would be supplemented by your volunteers. And I think that, in my opinion, would address our weight of response. And obviously our response time is pretty simple. The fire stations are a great location to serve this community. There's no problems there. And it's a beautiful facility. So that's kind of my perspective, not kind of, that is my perspective. And I'd be willing to get into the weeds on that with anyone if you need more clarification or have more questions about that. So from that, I want to move into your specific questions. Is that okay? And then we can give you to stop. I'll ramble on. So don't be afraid to stop me. Yes, sir.
Explain 3 people.
So the 3-person staffing model I'm talking about would be a captain, specifically the captain level, and then an engineer and a firefighter. And there could be some flexibility with that engineer position in that we could have 2 firefighters and a captain, but that would have to be the anomalies for different reasons. The minimum staffing I'd be comfortable with would be daily, would be a captain, engineer, and a firefighter. Yeah, great question. Okay, so our current staffing in Amador Fire District is we put 6 engines on the road every day. They're staffed with two personnel in each engine. I know you're probably wondering, why is Kirkwood different than that? It's that whole weight of response. Those engines are all minutes apart. We're up here, we're long ways apart. So that is a difference, and I acknowledge that. I don't know what our average tenure is. I would say we're probably in the 3 to 5 year range is our average. Make no mistake, we are a feeder pool to the Valley and the Bay Area. We do generally host a recruit academy every year, and we're bringing on 3 or 4 new folks every year. I don't see that changing, frankly. I just don't. In my experience and in my career, one of the biggest changes I've seen is the fire service has become very transient. People are moving on. It used to be you'd wait in line. I waited in line with thousands of applicants to get a job. Once you landed your job, you stayed put. You did your 30 years, retired, and that was your home base. It was very rare to have anybody move on. Now, when I talk to my colleagues, you know, with Sac Metro Fire and Consume This Fire and other Bay Area departments, and they're in the same boat we are, it just tells me it's not a money thing or a necessary. Certainly, leadership and environment's all a big part of that, but I really think it's more of a culture, and the current culture in the fire service, and probably not unlike industry, people stick around 3 or 4 years and then they move on to something else. So we are certainly victim of that. However, my responsibility as fire chief, and something I'm very proud of, is addressing that head on, not reacting to that, but being proactive. And so what we've done is we've implemented a stipend volunteer program, our apprentice firefighter program. That's kind of our on deck circle, if you will. So when we have openings, we've got people that are assimilated, they're trained, they're qualified. I don't want to oversimplify it because it's not quite this simple, but it's almost a plug and play, you know. Where we do have good tenure is in our leadership. Our captain level are all well tenured employees. Our battalion chiefs are well tenured. And I'm very proud. This is something I took into consideration. And I don't mean this to sound derogatory. I'm just going to be frank with you guys this afternoon. Amateur Fire is not what I would call a chief eater organization. There's some fire districts and fire departments that are going through fire chiefs every few years. This district's been around since 1990, and I am the 4th fire chief they've had in that time. That's for me, because obviously I'm at will. That's something very important to me. So we have very good tenure at the chief level, at the captain level, battalion chief level, etc. But our entry level positions certainly turn over. We have 9 fire stations, and we staff 5 of those. 4 of those are volunteer. We're getting ready to staff 6. We're going to be staffing station 121, which is down in the our west division, west of Plymouth, if you're familiar with that. And then our governance is a little unique. We're a dependent special district, and there can be a lot of confusion with that. And I look at it that was one of the things that concerned me about accepting this position or going after this position was that I'm working for the Board of Supervisors. And the reason that concerned me was I was thinking, hey, is their priority going to be the fire district or just keeping their constituents happy regarding Board of Supervisor things? And I will tell you without a doubt, one of the best parts about my job, frankly, is working for the Board of Supervisors. Very professional, very supportive, have no problem holding me accountable, which we all need. They're organized. I'm not in a board meeting explaining to the board how to run the board meeting. I get to actually worry about my role as fire chief and being accountable to them and the community. So as a dependent district, we share a board, and we're not unique. There's a lot of dependent districts throughout the state of California. I don't know about the nation, but certainly in California. Believe it or not, it can be a city council, it could be a CSD, it could be a lot of different things. What I like about it, besides that we have a duly elected board that understands the Brown Act and all those things, is we have a lot more oversight. We have the county auditor that looks at our books. We have to balance our budget. All of our stuff is posted with the county financials. We have county counsel that helps and advises us on contracting and things of that nature. We just have a lot of resources available to us. Director Brown probably doesn't want me to say this, but another benefit we have is if we ever got in a pinch, the county has a mechanism to help us out, to loan us money and do things that wouldn't be available to us if we were truly an independent special district. It might be available to us, but it'd be a lot harder. So our governance is we share a board with the Board of Supervisors. Beyond that, we function like a special district. We have our own budget, our own payroll, all those things. We employ administratively. We have 2 administrative positions. We have a person responsible for our HR, all the stuff that comes along with that, workers' comp, benefits, etc. Then we have a person responsible for our finances, which includes payroll, which kind of dovetails into HR. So paying all the bills, keeping track of the budget, so on and so forth. Kayla Dale, who's with me today. Kayla's kind of a right-hand person, I should say. She's our public information officer, but frankly, does way more than that. One of the things that's very important to me as fire chief is that we always connect with our communities. I want to be accessible. I want the fire department to be accessible. I want the community to look at it like, not that we're Amador or fire, that, hey, that's my fire department. And Kayla helps us do that by, coordinating all kinds of community outreach. We are doing something in the community weekly, if not daily. That's very important to me. So Kayla fulfills that role and then does all the public information officer stuff that comes along with fire district. And then we have a fire prevention officer who works full time. It does fire investigations, and then the engineering side, the code enforcement, etc. We cover 513 square miles now. We just merged with a small district, Lockwood Fire Protection District. And like I said, we do that. We put 6 engines on the road. We just recently ordered a ladder truck. I'm really excited about that. And that'll be in service here sometime in 2026, hopefully early 26. So we'll be putting, with 121 opening, we'll have 6 engines and a truck company on the road every day. That's a big deal for us down there. It's a big deal for the county. It takes a lot before you really need a ladder truck, and we're there, and it makes me happy and sad. I want to keep the county small too and rural, but without growth, right? If we're not growing, we're dying. So county's growing a little bit. Our call volume, we run about 4,500 calls a year, so about 12 calls a day district wide. You know, sadly, we run a tremendous amount of horrific traffic accidents. I would say we're probably up there in the state for traffic accidents, which is a bummer to say, because I believe one of you is a volunteer. As you know, traffic accidents are one of the more tragic things we deal with respect to people being injured and fatalities and all those things. But our district, you know, on a weekly basis is cutting somebody out of a vehicle, flying people out, just bad things happen. It's mainly Highway 16 and Highway 88. We have, yes, sir.
The ladder truck will be stationed at the Jackson Rancheria.
Yeah, be at 116, yeah. Yeah, which Jackson Rancheria is a contract for us. They staff 2 engines out of there. And they were gracious enough to buy us a ladder truck and donate it to the fire district. So I can't say enough good about Jackson Rancheria, and I mean that sincerely. Just very professional, very collaborative. If we need something, they're very responsive. We don't get pushback from them. And honestly, obviously we don't take advantage of that. I don't go to them unless we truly need something, and I make sure it's well thought out before we ask for it. So that's our facility. Our facilities are all in pretty good shape. Station 114 is a joint we rent from the Pine Grove Community Services District. That station, I don't want to say is in disrepair, but it's not appropriate for a fire station. We've outgrown that. And so, in fact, Director Brown was part of securing an $8 million gift from the state to build a new fire station in Pine Grove. And so we're well on our way to doing that. We're remodeling Station 121. When I say remodeling, we're remodeling it to accommodate a duty crew. It's in great shape. None of our stations are dilapidated or any of that. They're all well maintained and in good shape. Any questions about that section? And as things come up, feel free. So how would our crews view the Kirkwood rotation? I'll say this, and then again, I'm just going to be blunt and honest with you guys. Some of our folks are going to want to be here, and some of our folks, we're going to have to push them to be here. There's all kinds of reasons for that. Some people don't enjoy the snow, don't want to deal with that. Some people love it. Some people will try to be on that mountain the morning they go off duty. In terms of us rotating people into Kirkwood, I'm not too concerned with that. I don't think we'll have a problem there. The other stations correlate similar to Kirkwood. No, I wouldn't say any of our stations are super busy, but all of our stations are steady. Like everybody's going to be on the road 2 or 3 times a day for the most part. What services can they provide in addition to responding to calls? So I'm open-minded to stuff, but I want to be upfront with you. We work with Local 5181. They're organized, which I fully support. There's value in that. So I have to be careful. Can they go out and fix water lines and stuff? No.
Right.
We need to test hydrants or things of that nature. Sure, that's well within the purview of a firefighter position or the fire service, and we do that in our district right now. Can they help with, firewise stuff or inspecting homes or things of that nature? Sure, absolutely. I'm not opposed to that. But I want to be clear. I have some experience with the CSD where the CSD wanted us to, dig up broken water pipes and put in swing sets at the park. So I can't do that. That's getting outside of their job description.
But digging out the
Yeah,
hydrants in
of
the
course.
snow at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Marking hydrants,
Okay.
digging them out, clearing them, sure. We
Okay,
can do
because
some
in the
of that.
past, we had questions in terms of inspecting homes or looking for problem areas and identifying
We could
those.
do that.
Those are all
Yeah.
things that
As
fall.
long as there's a direct nexus to fire protection, I don't think there's a problem, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't want to give you guys false hopes that we're like a Swiss Army knife here. We're going to be the fire department.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. That's what I have in terms of staffing. How can existing Kirkwood fire department volunteers participate? Well, let me just say this. I'm a huge believer in the volunteer fire service. And and I know in this case, I know I can speak for Chief Ansel when I say trying to maintain a well-trained, robust force of volunteers is a huge workload. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. There's all kinds of reasons for that. So I'm gonna get a little philosophical with you guys here. I don't see a day in Amador County or here where the fire service can be effective without volunteers. Maybe long after I'm gone, but I don't see anything in the foreseeable future. So whether we like volunteers or don't like volunteers really doesn't matter. We need them. They are necessary. Fortunately, I love the volunteer fire service. And my philosophy is this: I'm not going to waste their time. I'm not going to put on BS, poorly planned training events. We're going to be organized. When you give your time to us, we're going to make sure it's worth your while. And on the flip side of that, not to sound harsh, I'm not going to let you waste my time. You got to participate. And I understand life gets in the way and you're going to miss training. That's okay. You just got to communicate with me. When I came to Amador Fire, we had maybe 5 volunteers, and out of those, maybe 1 was active, kind of. And right now, we're pushing in the high 20s, almost 30. We're bringing more on. I believe in it. I'm personally committed to it, and that's the challenge of the fire service. Is I believe, in my experience, the fire chief directly has to be involved in the volunteers. It's not something you can delegate, and that's no offense to anybody or anybody in the chain of command at all. People are giving you their time, their most precious resource. They want the person that's responsible to be part of that. If I'm asking you, Bob, come to drill on Wednesday night, you've got a full-time job, all that stuff, a family, just like I do. But I'm not willing to go to drill on Wednesday night. That's not going to work too well, right? Hey, where's the chief at? Oh, well, he worked all day. Yeah, well, so did I, right? So I don't see an issue with your volunteers. They got to meet our standard, got to be clean shaven, got to be trained, they got to meet the minimum qualifications. My policy with volunteering is none of that is going to cost you any money. It's just going to cost you time in terms of your training, your physicals, and all those things. The district covers all that, and I would apply the same thing here. And those costs obviously would be passed on here. So they would just be part of our response. I don't isolate volunteers. I don't believe there's a difference. I believe it's apples and oranges in the sense that I'm just going to keep picking on you, Bob, since you're the president. If we have a new SOT,
You have 1 month left to do it.
All right.
So make it count.
If we have a new operating guideline or something that I expect everybody to have and understand, our career staff, I expect them to pick that up pretty quick and get that dialed in because they're paid to be here, right? And they're here for 48 hours at a whack. You're going to come to, trainings one night a week. I might give you some grace and say, hey, it's going to take our volunteers a couple months to get on board with this. Let's show them some grace. Beyond that, I don't have a difference. I don't look at it like, well, Eric's a paid guy, Bob's a volunteer, so Eric's going to throw the ladder and Bob's going to root him on. No. If we need a ladder thrown, hey, Bob, let's get the building laddered. That's how I treat volunteers. This number 4 concerns me. Do you believe that volunteers, especially EMT trained Vail ski patrol, can serve as part of the 3-person crew during the ski season? Not as part of that minimum staffing, but they can certainly, and I would hope that they would supplement that staffing. But I would not want to count somebody working on the slopes as part of our staffed engine company. I'll just go back to the response time, the way to respond, that stuff. And I'm just apologize if I'm shocking anybody. I'm just being open and honest.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that volunteers extend the
Absolutely.
ability to respond and they don't replace
Yeah.
the minimum size.
No, right. So, I've explained, I think you understand. I started as a volunteer 33 years ago, did that, very proud of that. That was my way in. I look at volunteers, they generally fall into one of two categories. You either have the true blue community volunteer that does just that, wants to help their community, and maybe they have some other career path or whatever, or maybe they're retired. Then you have the volunteer that wants to do all that, but wants a career in the fire service and sees this as a avenue into that. And I think there's value in both of those. So I have no concerns. Your volunteer program doesn't concern me.
Okay.
Extended emergency medical services. We understand that beyond the treatment of an EMT, beyond the treatment an EMT can provide, a paramedic can provide critical assistance, including opening airway, painkillers, etc. Here's what I'll say about paramedics. I spent a lot of years on an ALS engine company where we had paramedics on there with us, and it is a game changer. There's no doubt about it. But it's also challenging. I'm going to talk about the money side of it separate. Just from a daily staffing standpoint, once you go to that model and you start providing and you announce that, hey, we are an advanced life support provider, and you're it. That's it. That is your minimum. And you can't, well, one day we're ALS, the next day we're not. We can't do that. If we do that, then we can't advertise that we're ALS at all. And what I found is having paramedics, though it's extremely valuable, is kind of a double-edged sword, especially somewhere like this. Their skills are very perishable. There's a certain amount of patient context you have to make, and I don't want to poo-poo paramedics because they're wonderful and I believe in them, but keeping it real, I don't know if that's a realistic option for Kirkwood from what I see at this point. On top of all of that, the maintaining their certification and licensure, the staffing challenges, all those things, is the cost. Nobody wants to take on that kind of liability, that kind of training and all those things and make the same as somebody who doesn't have all that. So you've got to pay them more. To get them accredited, so you go through schooling, you're looking at well over a year to become a paramedic. By the time you finish the schooling part, the field part, etc. And then once you've done all that, now you've got to become accredited in the EMSA you're going to be operating in. And depending on the EMSA, that's quite a lengthy process and kind of a burden and a challenge, I'll say, to put it lightly. So you turn somebody over, these are entry-level positions, we turn somebody over, we hire 3 medics, we're staffing, every day there's a medic on duty, we're doing great. And then, hey, Joe Schmo's going to Berkeley Fire Department for 3 times the amount of money. Now we got a hole to fill. Well, now we're forcing the other 2 medics to fill that void while we spend the next year. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just logistically, it's just very challenging. Unless you have a lot of depth, which we don't have, it's a very hard program to maintain. And I'll just tell you, I believe in it. I believe in advanced life support, but I've lived it. I've managed it firsthand as a company officer and a chief officer. And it'd be a tough nut to crack up here. However, I do have a solution to that. I think having EMTs and something we talked about yesterday in our chiefs meeting, we met with Mountain County's EMSA and their medical director, Dr. Freeman was her name. She's brand new. And we really impressed upon her. Title 22 is being rewritten. There's a lot of stuff in the works right now. And we really impressed upon Dr. Freeman the importance of expanded scope EMTs and increasing the amount of adjuncts we can use and medications we can administer, so on and so forth. There are some very fundamental life-saving things we can provide as BLS providers under that expanded scope that doesn't bring with it all the baggage of having a full-blown paramedic. but yet meets the objective of really increasing our level of service and our life-saving skills. And it's something that I believe in. I've seen it, sadly, as advanced as we are in California. When it comes to our EMTs, we are decades behind the rest of the country.
And that decision could be made as a community? It's
No,
not
it
a
needs to be
state thing?
supported by our EMSA,
Uh-huh.
which is still Mountain County's up here. Yeah.
That's two of
Both
us.
of us are on.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But that board could make that decision. It doesn't, it has the authority to
No,
decide.
the EMSA's got to approve it and support it.
And the doctor.
Yeah.
The biggest is the doctor has.
Yeah.
Dr. Freeman.
But I will tell you, Dr. Freeman did, in my opinion, seem very receptive to it. And I think, I don't see how you could push back on it as long as everybody's doing their diligence and, functioning appropriately. I don't see a negative to it at all. There is some additional cost. You have medications that expire and all those things, but
Mhm.
to me, that would be kind of an answer up here for you.
Okay.
And with that includes advanced airways, and what you're talking about there is the endotracheal tube, something like that. We have airways that accomplish that same, getting a good secure airway, much more than just a OPA or whatever. And that falls under that expanded scope.
Okay.
In terms of contracting with Kirk, what improvements do you believe are required to assets, including fire station, housing, equipment, and apparatus? So I've only had a quick cursory tour last time we were here, that was a couple months ago. Chief Ansel gave us a great tour. We would need barracks. We need a place, and I think there's room for that if I remember right in your firehouse downstairs.
Yeah.
We need basically it's like a small apartment. We're gonna have 3 people on duty. So you're going to have a total of 6 people rotating through here throughout the month. They would all need a locker. We would need 3 bunks, refrigerators, that sort of thing. I don't see any, from what I saw, nothing was like, oh my gosh, we'd have to do this. Your apparatus didn't scare me at all. I don't see much worse. I hate to say some of ours might be a little worse that we're working on right now. So I don't see any major improvements. Certainly, we would have to, really get detailed with that stuff and spell out exactly what we're going to need. But I guess for what it's worth, my first blush, I didn't see anything that concerns me or is alarming to me. And then how do you envision the startup phase and time to line to full local coverage? Yeah, there's definitely some reflex time there. Our hiring process, from the time somebody's hired to meet in the seat, we're probably talking. You're probably talking upwards of 4 months, something like that.
And then LAFCO.
Well, that's fast.
Yeah. Well, this would be a contract.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any suggestions on how we could reduce cost or raise revenue? Geez, without really diving in here, I apologize. I don't have much on that.
Yeah.
In terms of raising your revenue, you're talking about the 218 process.
Yes.
We just went through that very laborious process, but I don't know if Director Brown would agree with me. I think the benefit assessment route is a really good way for funding. It's stable. It's got a mechanism in place to increase with the CPI. From what I see, I like that much better than I do our sales tax, our Measure M. It's just super clunky, super volatile. So I think you're on the right path with that. So that's what I have for your set questions, and I'm willing to take any questions you guys may have.
Okay, and just for those of you on Zoom, if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll start with the board.
Yeah, there was one that
Did I miss one?
you didn't touch on, which was transport, either.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
How is that handled as far as ambulance or helicopter transport or whatever?
Do you have it? Who is your provider right now up here?
Helicopter,
No, for ambulance ground transport.
in which county it is. If it's in Alpine County, it's Eldorado Medical Services, Medic 7, usually
Yeah.
from Lake Valley, and then of course American Legion on the
Okay.
north side.
So, and you guys have to help me out. I think in Amador County, nobody else can provide ambulance service other than American Legion. they're the sole source
I
provider.
just don't know about up here.
No, Alpine County doesn't have a sole source, because I live on the west side, we have
Okay.
Pettus Pass.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Provide for us, and over here it's Lake Valley, and
Yeah.
and then also down in
yeah.
Nevada.
I tend to, frankly, I tend to shy away from transporting medic units with the fire department. There are places where that works very well. And I understand where it's kind of an anomaly up here. I certainly, as fire chief, would not be opposed to exploring that. But here's what I want you to think about is we transport a patient and we downstaff the engine. We have one person on the engine, two people on the ambulance. They're going to Barton or Sutter Ambler or wherever they're going to go. They're out of the district. Our staffing level is substandard now. And it's going to be a while before we get them back. Now, worse yet, they get pulled into the system and now they're covering Station 7 or they're covering, Medic 2 and Sutter Hill. And I think if we wanted to explore that, that would need to be its own staffing model. I really believe that. I think it would be irresponsible for us to try to do both.
Nice.
Yep, sorry, I appreciate you bringing that up.
Oh.
Yeah, that one actually jumped out at me in the parking lot and I skipped right over it, so.
These are just questions that we've all gotten from various people in the community.
Sure, good questions, yeah. All
So
these are
it's
good
not
questions.
an advocacy, it's more just, hey,
Yeah.
what's the answer?
Can I ask you, maybe the flip side of all of this? Suppose there was no volunteer fire department here at all, and there was no presence whatsoever here, and you were one of the responsible agencies to come in and help us. How would that change your prerogative of servicing Kirkwood over the spur? And obviously with the assist from coming from Markleyville for Eastern Alpine, but what would that look like to you?
So forgive me, but I want to make sure I understand your question.
If the KVFD folded,
We're not contracted.
not contracted,
And there's
there's nothing here,
Yeah.
and KVFD goes away, what would be your thoughts or response to that in terms of how you might change your prerogative on how you might have to service us?
That's a very, I think there's some real consequences to that. And frankly, I just wouldn't be comfortable diving into that without talking to my board and really thinking that through. I understand we have some jurisdictional authority up here and we want to be responsible for that, but I don't know that I have an answer for you right here at the podium today. I apologize.
Well,
Yeah.
and if I may,
Of course.
technically you'd be getting response from 111.
Well, yeah, but well, of
That
course
would
we
be-
respond, but I mean,
Yeah, because we definitely have an MOU if Kirkwood folded completely. But that would be a 45-minute trip. And that's,
With good
With
roads.
the spur open.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we have an avalanche. We're not responding.
and that's
That's the hardest thing.
And honestly, that's what scares me about here is what I think in my mind is in the wintertime, the summertime, no big deal. In the wintertime, you can't get here from there. I mean, there's the roads closed sometimes, there's all the complications with snow and wind and all those things that scares me. I don't know. But yeah, Jeff's exactly right. Our closest resource would be 111 there in Buckhorn and Mesa Meadows, yeah. Which is not an acceptable level of service, obviously. I have to believe Lake Valley would be closer to other places like that.
Chris has a question.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chief Withgo, for your presentation and your candor. The question may be naive, but could you speak a little bit as to the charter of your fire district? And I guess the blunt question would be, is there an obligation perhaps as the Amador Fire Department to cover Amador County, and Kirkwood is partially Amador County, or is it something that maybe because of Tri-County or whatever we need to contract with especially?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think that's a fair question. So in terms of a charter, we fall under the fire district law and the health and safety code and the fire district law of 1987. And we've said, hey, we're going to do this. We're collecting revenues to do this, protect life and property, including, EMS and rescue services within those 513 square miles. So those those properties that lie within our fire district, yeah, we would not abandon our responsibility. The caveat, though, is this is an extremely rural area. It's and districts are broken down into escapes. Now you have obviously, you know, urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, and wilderness. That's what I'm looking for. I believe this would be categorized as a wilderness area. And though this is unnerving to hear and say, the acceptable response time in the wilderness area is as soon as you can get there. So, yeah,
Okay.
I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry. I know that's not what we want to hear, but
In other words, can I summarize by saying, of course, Amador County Fire has an obligation to all homes and structures in Amador, but it does not have a service level agreement because we're designated as we are, and so we don't have you don't have a X minutes or X hour.
no. Yeah.
That seems to be what you're saying, unless
Yep.
unless a community like ours wants to contract for a designated or dedicated crew like what you're proposing. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do. That's correct.
Could you speak also to cost and the financials of this? I'm sure, or I know that our team has spoken to you or your team. I've heard numbers, but is that appropriate for today's meeting, Eric, to hear a little bit about cost?
Yeah, sure. It's the same numbers that we presented to the board previously. It's the roughly 1.35
Yeah.
from AFPD plus our fixed costs of about another 200.
Yeah, we're figuring 1.6 million as an initial estimate.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
well within the ballpark to include personnel and operating.
Correct.
Yes.
That's a 3-person crew of the caliber you described, rotating in and out for 24/7. Is that?
It rotates 4896, but yeah, they'd be staffed 24/7. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Eric, what is the 200,000? Is that additional expense that we don't have right now?
No, it's our existing expense. It's the maintenance of the equipment, the maintenance of the corridors,
yeah.
utilities for the
Okay.
corridors, et cetera. It's not AFPD costs. There's sunk costs
Yes.
of what we
Okay.
have to provide for AFPD in terms of
Okay.
equipment and bunk houses, as the chief spoke to.
And the other thing I want to say in full transparency is we're going to give you the cost estimate we're going to provide is going to be, you know, the most expensive option in terms of each employee at top step, fully loaded with all the incentives and so on and so forth. But what we're going to bill the district is going to be the actual cost. Not always, but generally the actual cost is a little less than what we estimate. And we do that by design, obviously. So we're not surprising you if we say it's 1.3 and it turns out, oh no, it's 1.5, you know. Does that make sense?
It does. Chief Withrow, you spoke very favorably of Amador County supervisors. Is there a sentiment at that board level or supervisor level about taking on Kirkwood? What do they think about all this?
Yeah, I wouldn't dare speak for the board. We haven't really officially, as far as I know, and you can help me out. I don't think we've ever officially spoke about it. I know Director Brown's here with me today, and I won't speak for you, but
That's right. Chief and I have had the conversation numerous times, and as far as the conversations I've seen on the board and that, but officially before the board, nothing's been said, as far as in our board meetings. But I think if everything went through to cover the whole valley, I think the board would be approval of it, as long as we have a good workable plan.
Thank you. Are there any examples, because we straddle 2, even 3 counties, any examples of you serving outside the borders of Amador County? Is that an
We
issue?
have MOUs and share with El Dorado County. We have multiple, areas in that aspect. So we would then work with an MOU with Alpine County and make sure everything would be, we're not taking their fire district from them or anything else. Yeah, so there would definitely be county councils involved with that portion of it.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Brown, if I could just ask to dovetail into Chris's question. It wouldn't properly come before your board of directors until such time as we had secured funding.
Correct.
Thank you.
And you actually request it. You put a request in and, you know, even before funding came down, you put a request in so we could put it before the board. And then we could also put, you know, then we could get the board supervisors involved too. So there, you know, there's two boards that we need to get to roll across there.
So you said request can go prior to securing funding?
I think so.
Okay. And I know just a tactical question, the 218 process, are the Amador properties in Kirkwood assessed the tax from the Amador County 218
So,
process?
yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No, okay, you would know better, but
Yeah, the engineer didn't because
Okay.
their response time was
too far.
too far out.
Yeah.
The benefit received was
The benefit was pretty low,
too low.
Right.
but compared to the other properties, yeah.
And that's the most interesting thing as far as that benefit assessment. I'm, you know, from Station 111, I'm like a quarter mile from the station where I live. I pay the highest amount
Mhm.
because I'm the quickest response to it. Now,
Right.
somebody, you know, X amount away, that's farther away, that it's gonna take them a while to get there, they pay a less amount. But so in Kirkwood, the amount will be, you know, about equal because everybody's fairly close.
Yeah.
Right.
As we wrap up, I just want to see if there's, oh, Chris, do you have another question? I just want to see if anyone else online has a question. If you you do, please raise your clarification, hand. John or anyone, could you summarize what you just heard on that answer? I wasn't clear.
I think the answer is, it was not 100% certain, but most likely the 218 process assessment, the tax related to that is charged to the Amador County properties here, but due to the distance, the benefit received, which is part of the algorithm for proportioning the amount, is very, very low. So it'd be a minimus tax if it's in place. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas Alpine County residents would not have that. I think we're answering two different questions. So one question was whether Amador properties are currently being assessed in the most recent 218. And the answer is either not, no, or de minimis.
Here's an easy way to
Yeah.
answer the question. Peter or Brandy, did you receive a ballot like I did in Pioneer? Because you guys both live in Amador.
Okay,
So there was no ballot
So-
set, so they were not assessed.
yeah, so there's no assessment there. Okay.
You're a good man.
Yeah, I know, I do what I can, chief. I do
Yeah,
what I
right to
can.
the point. Okay, the final check, if there's anyone online who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. And if not, this has been tremendously helpful for us to understand what's going on. Our next steps, we expect in the next board meeting or one after that to hear from our own 218 assessment. We've been reaching out to the community. The big question is, it's obviously a large cost. And getting feedback on who's willing to pay whatever. And a lot of this is, a lot of these questions we've collected from the community. And so this gives us a really good basis to go
Yeah.
back and talk to
Feel
them. I
free to
really,
reach out
yeah,
more. I'm happy to answer.
okay,
I
yeah,
just wanted to answer one more question from the county side of all this. We don't pay into AFBD for the most part. It's through our Measure Q. I mean,
Right.
M.
Excuse me, I got Q and
One of
M.
those letters.
Yeah, Measure M, and then our assessment. So that's how we pay for and then we're now up to how many contracts for Jackson, Plymouth?
Three.
Three contracts that we did. So you guys would be the fourth contract.
mhm. That's great. Again, thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time today,
Thank
and for
you
driving
guys
up here.
very much. I appreciate your guys'
Yeah,
help.
thanks, chief. Thanks.
Okay.
Kayla.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys as always.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
You're doing right back.
Yeah.
I guess we've been driving this bit for a minute, my friend. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Okay, we're ready to move on to finances, on slide 41 is the
Thank you
start.
so much, Bob.
Okay,
All right, so this is Terry's first meeting, so I'll show her how we used to do it, and then after this, she'll be
we'll
in
start with
charge.
applause. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, This is for two. This is for two periods, so we have, both August and September financials in here, but the budget variance is just the cumulative up until September 30th. So basically, probably one of the big things I want to highlight is the balance sheet change. The total capital reserve is much lower while the total operating is higher. That had to do with the transfer payment for the RUS loan that the board agreed to pay and the budget assumptions when we adopted those about a year ago. And so that's one of the odd variances in the balance sheet. And other than that, I'm happy to entertain, or Terry and I are both happy to entertain any questions on the specific variances or any of the sections that you may have.
Okay, and finance has reviewed both months.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger event coming up is to get the audit back.
Mhm.
And so, finance is gonna meet in December with a draft audit, and then we'll have a
Correct.
little bit more to chew on,
Yes.
or hopefully not.
Really not.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. But we will have that back. That's
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Sean. What's
the audit is coming to
The audit.
finance in December and the board in January.
Yeah, we thought we were gonna get it earlier, so we had to defer a finance committee meeting, review that until December.
Okay, any questions then on the September, October numbers? Okay, and then August, September, and then October preliminaries on page 73. The next item then. There you go.
There we go. These are actually real numbers because by the time we actually publish this, the preliminaries are actually the real numbers. So you can see where we landed on that. We're still seeing that small anomaly in the base rates on commercial Bob that we've talked about before. It's about a little less than 1% or a little more than 1%. Residential is up, but that's due to new homes coming online, new connections. So, but other than that, no real deviation from what we expected. Everything's within minimal percentages of variances.
Any questions on October? Anywhere? Okay. And cash flows. Next slide.
Cash
74.
flow is it where we expected? We did make the RUS payment, which it was 1 month offset from where we had expected it, but it was right within it. I will note that this month, as per the budget assumptions, we had one loan come due, which we are rolling over. And we're rolling it over, I believe we 7 years. So it's consistent with the last 3 rollovers. And there's no other large loans coming due at that time. And so that's why we rolled it to 7.
And do we know the rate? Yeah.
We do not know the rate for the rollover yet. I don't have the current USDA rates. It's usually generally less than the commercially available rates, but it's probably the high 6s or the low 7s. So, and it's sad to see a low one like 2.35 rollover, but that's the reality. We don't have sufficient reserves. We only have about 400,000 in reserves for electric right now since we paid off that $1.6 million loan, $1.4 million loan. But the cash flow is on target.
Are there any questions on cash flow? Okay, then we're ready to move on to item D, property tax allocations.
Right. So this is consistent with.
This is slide 75.
Yes, thank you. So this slide is consistent with both the budget assumptions adopted by the board, as well as the rate studies adopted by the board so particularly water, wastewater, and then electric, as we all know, that has to do with our loan covenants with RUS, and we only had to put in 145 this year, which we hope will be a continuing trend based on the stabilization of base rates versus the instability of commodity rates. So anyway, so the proposed allocations are, like I said, consistent with the rate studies, and happy to answer any questions. This was reviewed by finance, and they do recommend adoption.
And part of the discussion was, you can see the continuing increase to the allocation toward fire. So, what are the thoughts about being able to get that up to 400,000 in support of a potential contract?
Exactly. Yes. And so basically we took the minimums that were in the rate study. Thank you, John, for water, wastewater, and from the loan covenants. What we needed for employee housing, which was just to make it, make it a wash, and then pumped everything else into fire.
Okay, are there any other questions? Is our motion to approve the property tax allocations?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay, second, please.
Mid-Rotonda second.
Okay. And John moved.
Oops.
Yeah, okay,
Not Doug moved.
yeah, okay, roll call, please.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mid-Rotonda,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Nuremberg, aye, it's unanimous.
Okay, good. Next item, item E, employee board ski passes.
Yes, so as stated in the report, in late November, we were notified that Vail would no longer offer discounted the historically discounted passes they had offered to the district, but they are willing to extend us the preseason or early season discount. Kelly was nice enough to give it till the 13th, knowing that our board meeting was today. So that gives our employees a week to go get their passes at the preseason rate. It is a budget variance, so it's I'm unable to approve it, and it'll cost $3,000 to $4,000 more than budgeted.
The thing on this that I would probably change is just make it for the employees. Like I've never taken it as a board member anyway. I feel like it's kind of a conflict. I don't know about.
I agree. I've never accepted either because it is a gift to a public official.
Yeah.
It is not a gift to a public official. It is no more than your monthly stipend is a gift to a public official. It's a benefit of being a board member, just like you receive health. That is also a benefit. This is an employee benefit, just like health is. I would consider it. I don't think it's a conflict, but I mean, it's certainly the board's prerogative to terminate that for board. But
I think the visual.
Well,
looks that way.
I mean, I think independent of this conversation, I think there's a different thing that I would frame this program, given that there's now uncertainty of what this could look like even in the future, would be more of to have a stipend for health benefit or whatever it would be like more, which is similar to other organizations that I've been employed with, where you just have a benefit that you can have up to some number of dollars and whatever that is, and they could spend it on a health benefit, which could include this or other things if they don't ski potentially, and then that's budgeted as a fixed cost in our future budgets in a way. And then
something
that's
similar to how you can get a gym membership with your FSA.
something more similar to that, and like a health and wellness benefit that is an annual, once a year fixed value that you could spend in any way that you choose. Potentially, you could isolate it to just this if you so chose. You can make it more general to fitness equipment, gym memberships, whatever you chose. But for our employees who don't ski, potentially, they can then get a benefit for themselves equally as our employees who do want to take advantage of this. And then it removes the past scheduling in some elements. I mean, it would still be great if our friends at the resort would extend this, for especially for our seasonal employees who might not know they're employed by us until this time of the year, so that they don't pay full freight at the end of a season or end of a sign up season. But I would just say I would generalize this program to not be this. I would just generalize it to be a wellness program, and then that's a benefit to employees at that point.
Well, we could certainly consider that with the next budget
Correct.
cycle.
Yeah.
For today's meeting.
Right, and I
Well,
would
bringing
recommend
up changes, so.
Yeah.
But I would think the personnel should probably take that up first and then bring a recommendation
That's
to the
fine.
board.
Okay, why don't we do that in personnel and then for
And
today's,
it wouldn't have to be for next budget cycle. It could be if somebody
Yeah.
doesn't take it, if we get a new employee and they come in after the ski season, to Doug's point. So maybe personnel comes up with something and maybe we will meet in 2 weeks, Bob. On that.
okay. Chris, I couldn't tell, do you have a comment you want to make? No,
No.
okay. Well, I'd like to move that we up to $4,000 coverage for the ski passes for employees that choose to take those.
Mid-Rotonda seconds.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Rotunda,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Member Guy.
Okay. Planning Committee Charter. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So the topic at hand here is the future of the Planning Committee. It's the committee that I was asked to join and lead when I recently, a year ago, came onto the board. And in a sense, I think one can say that the projects that I inherited, at least, that were ongoing when I stepped in, are now completed. So those include things like the Energy Efficiency Incentive Program, a benefit for low income or qualifying residents. We have made efforts to speak to large commercial propane users that really have not led much to any uptake, to my knowledge, but we no longer have anything on our agenda. And so the question is whether the Planning Committee should continue. 1 second, please, forgive me. So you're probably all familiar with the charter of the Planning Committee. It is very broad when the committee was first created, and includes everything from exploring new revenue models that and business concepts from utilities around the country that might be worth adopting. From my point of view, that's a scope too broad to be really realistic for our purposes. Before my time, Doug chaired the committee before. I think there was a decision late last year that the committee focus on the overall goal of moving off propane and toward, not off, but gradually moving from propane to electrification. And so that's been, I think, the guiding strategic goal of the committee. But at this point, there are no clear projects to further that. So you may have seen Eric Rickert's letter to all of us, and it's in the packet. It makes the case for continuing the committee, and it lays out the various rationale for doing so, everything from leaning and gaining expertise from non-board members, bringing the community into the fold, taking board members, like in any committee, finance and others, a couple of board members to focus on topics that we can then bring back to board meetings in hopes of making those board meetings more efficient. And so I'll just briefly say that I think there is a role for the future of the Planning Committee. It would be a very different scope, and it would probably be much more connected to core business planning. On our agenda today is, of course, the electric master plan, and master plans for our other utilities are in the offing in the next year or two, water, wastewater, for example. And so I will make the case for a future for the Planning Committee. But if we decide that it's really just it's run its course and we ought to fold it up or incorporate these efforts into another working group, then I can certainly live with that. Why don't I just pause and ask if there are questions, comments based on Eric's letter or the topic as I've described it?
I think we should have a ongoing planning committee, so I wouldn't propose that it was disbanded. I think it's a little harder for planning because for finance, the tasks are pretty well defined and repeatable. So it's a little hard for planning. You have to, find the projects and the topics, but I think it's a necessary function. Yeah.
And I would second that in the sense that, there's a question in my mind of like what's operations versus planning in terms of like master plans. And I don't know that I have a strong opinion one way or another, but like, should master plans be in planning or is that an operations? I'm just generally asking because, as John said, there are recurring topics in finance, so that committee needs to meet. Master plans are a recurring topic, in which case planning, if that was what's in charge of master plans, would have a clear guidance. And if that was the only thing, it wouldn't meet that frequently. But it could meet more frequently. Other things do come up, and there are topics that could potentially fit into this. And so I think that's one way that I want to make sure that we are delineating not just what this committee is doing or should do, but also what makes sense in other committees and be clear about. And I think operations is the one that comes mostly to mind as the closest potential overlap with planning.
Well, I know that one of the management concepts that Eric has brought to our board or to our district is a whole process for master planning, and it's one that we obviously commend. In just later in the agenda, we're going to talk through FAQs, and I'm just going to read from one FAQ question in. It says, what is a master plan? And does KMPUD have master plans? In it, we describe that we're doing the electric and this year, we're doing propane next year, and so forth. But a master plan is a document that evaluates critical infrastructure, assesses its condition and longevity, and makes recommendations over a 20 to 30 year horizon. And that 20 to 30 year horizon, might transcend what you typically think of as operations.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, would you like to?
First, maybe responding to what Doug said, Eric.
Would you mind using that's a new thing we're doing.
Yeah,
The
that way
speaker,
everyone
the speaker
can-
picks you up better if you do that.
And everyone can see you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming today.
You're welcome. Responding to what Doug mentioned, so it seems to me that the function of the planning committee should be a sounding board for any proposal or idea that will in some way significantly affect the services or the cost of those services to the district's customers. So, if it's, that's right, because what the planning committee can do is can be a sounding board and can test the ideas as to the acceptability, particularly if whatever that change is going to be is going to result in, say, a 218 process or something where you need to get support from the community.
Would that be like rate studies would be as a part of that, or would that rate studies live in finance?
Well, rate study, I think, would be in finance, but I think that, like, just like with what we're talking about with the fire, for example, the idea of modifying the way the fire department works on a $1.6 million budget, which is going to affect rates a lot. Obviously, that'll go to finance. Obviously, it'll come to the board. But the planning committee could be a place where a certain constituency could be a sounding board. You could get a sense of whether or not it's going to succeed. It's just, that's what I mean. You get more people involved, you get those perspectives and so on. And there may be other ideas that come up. You never know. Maybe not something around the fire, maybe for other things though. I remember when we talked about, we thought we might run out of water sooner than later, right? We had this whole discussion about wells versus Caples Lake, and a plant, purifying plant, and so on and so forth. Well, that's the kind of thing that I would think that a planning committee would talk about. And then obviously whatever the board wanted to do would go to finance and operations, and we'll go through the whole process. But the starting point would be the planning committee. The other more general comment I want to make is, although obviously the basic responsibility of the public utility district is to provide the utilities reliably and as cost effectively as possible. But because we're Kirkwood, because where we are, because we're in 3 counties, this is the only elected board, that from the entire community. Whether you like it or not, it should act as a piece of glue for the community. And part of that is getting involvement from people. And one way of doing that, the committee is one part, the committee structure is one part of that. Just one part, but it is part of it, and I think it's important.
Thank you.
Oh. Doesn't have to meet monthly.
I think that's what I was coming to.
Right, can be when it's something meaningful to discuss, ideally at least quarterly, But anyway, you don't want to waste anybody's time, just like the chief was saying. I mean, we don't want to waste Eric's time, the staff's time, or any of the committee members' time, but it has to be meaningful.
Mhm.
Have we had any response at all to the idea that we would give people a break for doing the switch over from propane to electricity? Has anybody taken us up on that?
We haven't written the grant program yet. We have the parameters for it, but it's still being written.
Okay. I think, I mean, it's been pretty negative in terms of the biggest users.
Right.
Maybe for future discussion of the planning committee should we focus more on individual homeowners?
The whole point, well, that'd be a question for the board to decide, but the whole point of what the board directed was to reduce propane usage for those situations, and only the top 8 users matter, not the individual. They don't matter if we're about to run out. That was the whole, I think, the whole genesis of the idea.
That's been kind of a failure.
I don't know yet. I went skiing with Ricky yesterday.
Yeah.
And we talked about what might be happening. So
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
poke him a little bit more
All right.
and see whether he's going to do something before the funds get
Yeah.
reallocated elsewhere.
It just seems this might be more realistic to go for the smaller users. Who
But
get more
it won't
motivated.
have any impact.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm absolutely positive.
Any impact at all?
This is not on the agenda. This is not on the agenda, by the way.
Yeah, it's not on the
This is not an
agenda.
agenda item. Right? But this is the planning committee.
Trying to motivate or not motivate the planning committee.
Well, I think there may be opportunities to go into this within the planning committee, like Eric identified,
Right.
just not today.
Okay. No, I'm not asking for it today.
Okay, all right. So yeah, thank you for preventing us from wandering too far off topic. So Chris, you don't have any specific language changes you want to recommend to the charter?
No, this is for
Right.
discussion only today, and we get a sense of board response and also board response to the idea of the need for a planning committee. Essentially, what I'm saying is that the planning committee in its current with its current scope and charter, it's not clear it makes a lot of sense, and we probably should wind it down. But with a revised charter, which I would propose and submit for vote next meeting, it could. My proposal will, as you can tell, point pretty hard at having the planning committee closer connected or involved, or closer connected to the master planning process. The process we're about to talk about in electric has been going on for a long time. I mean, it's almost a long time horizon just to write the plan, never mind plan the future. It was last on the agenda, I think, 18 months ago or something like that, unless I missed something. So yeah, I would propose new charter language, submit that for approval next month.
Okay, well, let's see where that leads. Okay. Good. Thank you, everybody.
Eric C., are you willing to comment on and react to any of this?
You always do that. Eric C is Eric Rickert. Eric with a K is Eric Christensen.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Which one did you mean?
Refers to the
How
correct
about
way to
Eric
spell
number
it.
one?
Well, that'd be me.
Yeah, there you go.
I've worked either as a consultant for utilities or for utilities for the better part of my career. What I can say is that most water or wastewater utilities, I can't speak to electric as much, they have a committee called, and it's common across most 80% of the utilities I've dealt with, which is engineering, operations, and planning. It's always called EOP. And because planning fits right in operations. My recommendation would be that, especially since I agree with you, this is so overly broad, just to combine the committees and include all the planning topics there instead of ad hocs, which speaks to Eric's letter. Instead of doing ad hocs, we'd have a permanent place to deal with planning topics. But anything we're going to plan, looking like the big picture, like Eric Rickert said, is squarely going to come back in the utility realm of what we're talking. So that's what I've seen in the industry, but it's really at the board's pleasure if they want to have another committee. But that would also get us out of having to cancel over and over again, because we'd have a permanent home for planning topics when they do come up.
Well,
I would
that,
say,
that
like,
is an interesting. Go ahead.
the activity levels of at least the committees I've been on is finance is like busy. Yeah, there's a lot of content. And personnel is on personnel. There's regularly, well, but there's regularly
there's regular
something that's
thing.
mandatory to
Yeah,
do.
it's not monthly, but it's cyclical.
Yeah, and it's also occasionally some gnarly things to deal with.
Yeah,
Right. So it's certainly justified. I mean, for justifying a committee, finance, you gotta have it. Personnel, when I was out there was meaty issues to deal with. Operations, I don't feel like we tackled that much. I've only been on it for this year, but it seems like it's a general review of, aquifer levels and I and things like that. We don't have as much project work to do, so that would kind of support your proposal to have a combined EOP or something like that. Because it could use a little, while we meet pretty regularly on operations, we don't have a lot of heavy lifting to do, at least unless it's, I've only been on it for this year, so
Right.
you think is that abnormal or?
Well, it's up and down. It's, but when it's down, you've got to have you want to show some interest. I mean, like if all of a sudden, like what happened last year with snow removal, we had to deal with it, and now it's moving on where it's more tranquil.
Yeah. Let me call on Eric again. He has that comment.
I'm not advocating that there necessarily be a separate planning committee. What I'm advocating is that there be some involvement from the community in the form of committee members who have exposure to and can participate in the early discussions. So if it's all set in concrete, then what's the purpose? But if it's an idea and there are possible alternatives to that idea or different ways of thinking about it, different ways of planning it, that's the function of the planning. And if it happens in an EOP or OP or whatever it might be called, that's fine. It's just important that it happens and that it happened with some reasonable cross-section of community members that represent different parts of the community who might have different perspectives. That's what's important. And yeah, then if there's some major thing, then an ad hoc thing would be fine. I just think the planning aspect of it has to have community involved.
Could I ask Eric one? Do you agree? I have not sat in or listened in on the operations committee. Do you agree with the assessment that there's room on the agenda for planning?
Yes. Peter, I think you agree. We just canceled ops for December.
Good. Well, then I'd be very happy with what Eric described, this sort of blend it in with operations, close the planning committee for the foreseeable future, rely on TAC on special projects like we did for fire. And I personally would be happy to get involved in operations committee as soon as there's a need or an opening for that. Spend my effort there instead. I think that'd probably be the right approach for us.
The committees are limited to 2 board members.
Yeah, I know.
That's the other complication to factor in.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say that in terms of community members, to Eric's point, and I won't call him Eric too, because that's just too mean. Because he is my Scotch drinking buddy. We have room to absorb, I think, all the community members into ops. I think there's that many vacancies. So, which is a good thing.
And I was actually, that's why I was just looking up what we say the number of community members is, and you might even, it's 5.
5. All right.
7 total.
7.
Two directors and 5 community members.
Is there with great regularity.
Yeah.
But
my point more is that, like, if we're merging 2 communities in the spirit of
make it 7.
Make it 7
if we have
community members, and actually if we're changing charters, then we come back to the operations and renaming it to something operations and planning and have 7 or 9 or whatever we want to do, but just increase it to accommodate the potential for more community involvement.
I mean, typically the community members' interest lasts for about, on average, about 2 to 3 years, and then they will recruit more. So, I mean, realistically, you're going to get limited input from the community on a regular basis over a long haul, but as
Well,
different issues come up, then they
I will
want to get
take that as a
involved.
communications agenda item then maybe, and how we can recruit more people in
Well,
that way,
yeah,
because I don't think that that's,
The job you guys are doing with communications is awesome.
But-
I'll
but-
just say that.
but I'm just saying that like if recruitment and retention, not retention, I mean, retention is, a lot of things, but recruitment and advocating this and mentioning this in the newsletters, or for example, Eric, more often, things like that. Those are things that we could do to solve the recruitment problem. Or, try to take a look at it.
I think a lot of it though is just having meaty things to work on.
It is.
Yeah.
People
Like
want to
with-
show up for
like with
meetings.
finance,
feeling
finance,
like it's
we've
worth your
got
time.
Jack and Standish and
Frank.
and Frank, who are like, hey, we're always digging into things, so they stay on and they keep doing it. I was on planning before I was a board member, and it was like, make work. I ended up writing a white paper just because it was like, I feel like I gotta do something. So I just wrote one and it never went anywhere, but at least I felt like I made a contribution. So maybe it's just also having some meaty topics. And
It is. Now, if you're merging two things that maybe were medium weight into a heavier weight, then that gives credence to that. Lots of people do that.
I mean, there was a point in time where with there was so much development going on in the valley that planning was a lot more intense, and we had like 2 board meetings a month for a long time.
Right.
Just dealing with, so I'm not opposed to doing a combination committee.
Okay, Chris, I'm hoping this gives you enough to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, and why don't we stop at this point?
Bob, when do we make new committee assignments? Isn't that the new year?
December of 2025.
Oh, okay.
Things could be adjusted.
But we can adjust if there's some,
we can
yeah,
reflect
yeah.
It sounds like there's consensus for merger. What I would recommend then, since that if what I'm hearing is what I'm hearing, that maybe Chris and Peter and I work on an updated charter for the newly renamed committee,
Yeah.
and then bring that back to the board
Mhm.
for decision.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yes.
Okay,
All
great.
right, thank you for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up.
I didn't mean to volunteer you that you're going to help me
Oh.
write the charter, Chris, but
Okay.
I appreciate you.
All right, so we're going to move on now to the utility FAQs.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you. So this is a number of documents that have been created over the last, I would say 6 months or so, and it's actually all related to the next agenda item about what communications has been working on. I've mentioned these a few times in the previous meetings, and that we've been working on these, but we've held it to the time where all of these are coming together so that we can have all of these, and we have each service that we have plus a general FAQ in the deck. And I just want to say thank you to a lot of people who have worked on this before we dig into any feedback. So we have 4 people on the committee in terms of Chris and I as the directors, and then we have Pamela Hyde and Sandy Goldberg, and Sandy's here on the call as well. But staff has done a ton of work on this as well. And I don't know exactly all the people because I see different red lines at times, but lots of people have contributed this on the staff. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to pull this together. The intent of all these documents is to post these on our website and then communicate these to our customers. A lot of the feedback that we put in here was great because I had the customer survey that we had a couple of months ago. We all read that. That was one of our things that all of us in the committee did. We read all of the feedback that we got about what was confusing to people, and we tried to put as many questions in here as we could to address this as best we could, knowing that this is a first pass. We don't expect perfection here. We obviously will take feedback, but we expect and hope that people will read this and there will be questions that we haven't answered, and we will then update this. And actually in the next board agenda item is some of the communications topics in the future, and we have as a recurring topic to revisit these. And one of the questions I will have is, at what cadence do you think should that be? And so again, the intent here is not to be perfect. We want to get something out the door to support our customers, answer questions, to help our staff answer questions. So when we get phone calls or questions via email, we can answer it and also refer people to this place on our website to self-service if they have questions in the future. So Eric, did I cover everything? Any other questions
Yeah.
there? Or Chris, covered anything else you want me to mention there, or Sandy even?
Nope.
I think
Good
it's-
reading.
I think it's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah,
everyone involved putting this together and um, I, I think it's a big step up and
I spotted
That's
4
pretty-
items. Of it.
Fantastic.
All right, so on page,
I was just gonna send you those offline. Do you want?
I mean, if
Oh,
they're,
I
if
can-
they're substantive, then we can discuss them maybe, but if they're more
Typographical. please
technical,
let me know.
typographic,
And
and
some that aren't typo, but I don't know.
no, I didn't,
They're
I
not
didn't look,
policy
I didn't
either.
look for typos.
okay, I appreciate that. I mean, it's up to you. I mean,
On
I'm
what page you're on, Bob?
Well, real quickly, on page 86,
All right,
and this is PDF page 86,
Yes.
there's just a set of questions with no answers. So I assume that should be omitted. It says, given the trend, about 2/3 down the page, given the trends toward electrification. So it's 3
Oh,
questions, but there's no
yeah.
answers.
Thank you.
So I assume that's just,
that was a mistake.
yeah, mistake. Okay.
back on, just backing up one page.
Sure.
85. We have a 5 megawatt, we really don't have the usable generation that high because the Volvo generators aren't practical, so we might lower that number to 3.
Well,
I
we have
think
5,
That is true.
The question above it says 3.28.
yeah.
Or no, wait.
The
No.
nameplate is
No,
5.
no, John's
Sorry.
absolutely
No, you're
right.
right. No, you're right. I was
Yeah.
reading
John's
it wrong.
right.
That was the
We'll-
peak
we'll
usage.
do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw that too in the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
My next one is on page 93. And this is when people sign up at KMPUD.com, they have the option to also have their name listed in the directory that's searchable.
Okay.
So that there's several things that they can do at KMPUD.com, but it's never tied together into one place. Like, for example, if they want to allow someone else to look at their meters, they can do that. So I would say in the future, it might be useful to have just sort of an introduction to when you register there, these are the benefits and these are the things that you can do. And then so that's one example is on 93. On page 104. I just want to mention that when you go into your snow removal section, it shows you the names of the contacts. So you don't have to. So it's not that they receive a notice. I mean, they did, but they're there.
Okay.
And then there's a comment on page 175. Which is other ideas discussing promoting the newsletter and our monthly bill. And there's already a place to do
175, Bob?
That's too
I think
175.
I think you're talking about is that a communications report?
Oh, that's in the communications
Yeah.
committee. Yep. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
I had just
It's
2 other.
We wrote a lot of pages, but not that many.
I had
Yeah.
2 other little things. One was, I'm not sure you said what was recyclable, because I know things up here, I don't think we do styrofoam or plastic in that. I don't know if you want to put that in there.
So what happens with recycling? Even though we have dedicated recycle dumpsters, they still have to sort everything, so it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they tip it all in the same truck. They take it to a sorting facility and they sort it all. Even if it's in an orange bag, they rip open the bag, dump it out, sort it all.
Called the Murphy
They,
system.
they,
Right.
out in the Bay Area, they throw all my styrofoam back at me. They sent me,
Well-
write me a nasty note and.
We're dealing with a kinder place.
Yes,
The other,
I can ask them, John, if that.
no, it was a these are just suggestions. The other one is I didn't see in there promoting the value of the online reporting of usage. Because I get tremendous benefit out of that. Like there was a hailstorm up here and I thought, what is going on in my house? My security cameras picked it up. And I could go in and say, okay, well, I don't have a water leak. I don't know water. If I'm worried about outages and things like that, and I'm worried if my house is getting heated, I can look at that and see, oh, it's spiking some propane a couple times a day. So I'm probably getting heat in my house. So promoting the value of that, I think that's really.
Yeah, and that was my suggestion
Really
that
cool.
there could be a section on just what's available on KMPUD.com.
Yep, that'd be good to,
Yeah.
we add that as general.
Now you get the detailed comments, don't overshadow that. It's really.
It's really,
It's a
it's a
great
great,
piece of work.
it's a great,
So thank you.
yeah, great first effort.
And I would
Put that in general, I would say.
Yeah, just after that in general. So yeah, Eric, thanks for taking notes on that. And I think these are great pieces of feedback. And I would say if you talk to anyone in the community and you get any questions that, try to find it in the FAQ and point it to that. And if you don't find it, please send myself and Chris a note, or I should say, send me a note. We'll make sure we can address this at a reasonable cadence.
That sounds great.
I just say that Doug emphasized already, this is a work in progress. We want it to grow and keep up to date and all of that. My hope, I think it's the hope of the whole committee, is that we'll use this, we'll really lean on these FAQs to inform people, for example, through the newsletter, for example, on the bill, so that we're, when we're pointing people to this knowledge base, and I think we can get a lot of use out of it, as opposed to just putting it up on the website and hoping people, find their way to it. We can promote it and lean to it and point to it, with every newsletter.
Great.
Just as an example, when the newsletter says snow stakes, it's that time of year, then we say all that in the newsletter, but then for more, point to the snow FAQ, just as an example.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Exactly. We need to vote on that or anything, Eric?
Yeah, I'd probably like the board to direct us to make these small changes and post them on the website. That probably would make me comfortable.
Then I would like to, this is Mid-Rotonda motioning to post all of the FAQs on the website with the adjustments discussed today.
And this is Bob Epstein seconding that motion.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mid-Rotonda,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Nürnberg, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, then item H, communications.
Great. So Eric has pulled up the spreadsheet that I've been keeping for our tasks that we have been working on for the last year. So I took over in communications about 12 months ago. Before we look at the ones at the top of the list, I do want to scroll down a little bit, Eric, just so you can see all the things in green there that are done. And I just want to say thank you again to the committee and staff. And we reflected on this at our last meeting in November. I just feel like we have accomplished a lot of good work this past year. And this conversation for this topic is to talk about what we will do next year. But we have done a lot of work about protocols, procedures, which you might have noticed were linked in the FAQs. We've dealt with some of the programs and communications, the newsletter, how to get content policies in there and working with our staff on that, and also how to get subscribers and campaigning around that, and then the FAQs more recently. So I feel like we've done a lot of work over the last year, and the committee is excited to do more work over the next year. And so the one item there in blue is one thing that I want to bring up kind of specifically as what we've already thinking about, and I will bring up an idea that I brought up a meeting or two ago. We'll come to that specifically, but I want to mention that everything that's in white there under the status is what we need to prioritize. And then there the three in pink are the recurring, which I just would like some guidance if anyone has opinions, about what we can work on, what frequency we would revisit the FAQs, the newsletter, in terms of content and subscription stuff, because I know that's a lot of interest in what we do. I have opinions on that, I guess, but and then also in what we have here, but that this content is just to get board guidance in our spirit of having the board guide our committees on what they should be working on, to get that feedback from the board today. And so that we have a plan out for the next, at least 6 to 12 months-ish of work to do. And so I can give you my opinions if you'd like, or I can just leave it open-ended. It's up to you. What would you like to have happen?
Let's start with your opinions.
So I would say in terms of the recurring things, I would say we could have each of these a quarterly, if or a semi-annually, and have it be something like, no, Eric, what did you want? Annually? Nah. Well, I'd say semi-annually at the least for me to start.
Well, I think there's also a difference between a correction.
Right.
And then
revisit.
and a revisit. Doing them more than annually is quite a lot of work, whereas fixing items can happen as they're spotted.
Fair enough. I mean, I think of this more as like, do you say, hey, anything in the FAQs that we should really change significantly? Saying that once or twice a year is, I think, fine with me. But giving updates as they come is that. In terms of the topics of that don't have any color for status, I think what I would like to do is my personal opinions are joining in the opt-in, opt-out and the new customer onboarding as one topic to think about. And those topics are saying, just thinking about all of our newsletters and things like that, you know, can we have people opt out of them as opposed to opt into them as a way of increasing subscriptions? And also thinking about is just new customer onboarding. We have content around EDUs and AMUs that we think about and what are we giving our customers? And I got a packet 4 years ago when I bought here, but you know, I think things have changed and how can we help them understand our utilities and just making sure that they have a good customer first experience with the utility district, I think could go a long way. So that's one thing I think that would be really useful. And the second would be topics around the website in terms of, I don't want to redesign the website, but I think we have some topics here that would generally be thinking about fixing broken links, centralizing meeting information and documents and references to our policies and procedures and just having a fresh look at it. And that could take many months to do that. Again, I don't want to make this a complete redesign of our website, but I think there are enough times over the last years that I've been on the board where this gets updated, but this is not, and I need to work with staff on that to get clarified that it's worth maybe centralizing and spending some time on that. So that's what I would think. Chris, I don't know if you have any things that you want to chime in on that as well.
No, I'm in approval or in agreement.
Eric, does that sound reasonable to you, other than the cadence part, potentially?
I think I'm thinking of it as a complete 6-month rework like we just did every 6 months, which seems atrocious.
I was not thinking that.
So that's how I interpreted. That's why I said annually.
Okay.
But I also imagine I'm going to update these independent of the communications committee as things occur that are relevant. That's why I'm saying it's more of a cursory. Hey, let's look at this. Are we missing key central topics that occurred during this year? That would be there because it's a living document. It's going to be updated without the communications committee.
Great.
So that's why I was saying annually. So I was looking at more from the 30,000 foot, and
that's perfect. That's fine with me.
And then, but the granular is going to be happening constantly.
Perfect. As long as that's happening constantly, that's happening with me.
And then the other thing of opt-in, opt-out, I think that you talked about the newsletter, like, you know, instead of clicking, yes, I want it, no, you automatically are clicked that you get it. But we also, ACH was the other component of that versus, and how you get your statements, it's email. It's not print. It's, you don't get to choose your email. Because I mean, we have I was just looking through reports over the other day, how many customers get their bills by print and email. I'm like, oh, this must be an artifact from anybody whose account is below 20,000, which means an older account. No, it's really not. There's a lot of people that are doing double duty, which is costing the district a lot of money. And how do we get them off of print and only onto email, only onto ACH, so we don't have these delinquencies and, you know, things that were occurring. So I think that was the other side of opt-in.
I agreed. It's revisiting all of our kind of policies and procedures, especially as it relates to customer onboarding and new order packaging, like what do we communicate and things like that. So we can come forward with policies on that. So that would be for that stuff. I would, for the fire and EMS one, this has been an agenda item that we've kind of kept on here given the conversations. And I brought up a couple meetings ago, or maybe it's a couple months ago because we didn't have a meeting, but I really liked having a community meeting last December that was related to fire and EMS and put a spotlight for our community, because, you know, not everyone comes to these meetings and hears a fire chief be able to speak about our challenges. And I would say, I would really like for us to consider this, and I would volunteer the communications committee to take this on, to have, I think would be a lightweight version of what we did last year. And even so far as to say that we could put something together and maybe host it downstairs and have it near our equipment and have the community see what we're talking about, even in some ways, but just to give them an update about where we are, and not that we're promising anything, but just to say, it's been a year. Here's what's happened over the last year. And, you know, I'm relying a lot on Chief Ansel here to agree on to doing this, of course, but just to have something that we can announce to the community in the next couple of weeks when, you know, we know there are a lot of humans in the Valley, to give them an update and tell them a little bit of what we heard today. And and just give that update. And I think that's what I would like this agenda item to be, to next be. If the
Mhm.
board so agrees.
I think after the presentation in January, that's gonna be the right time to do it, because then no decisions have been made. We have rough numbers, assuming we don't change the methodology, and something to actually talk about. So, and everybody's here in January, so it's a good, especially around the 3-day weekend.
I was hoping more in December, just because we could tell people that people in January what's happening in January, because it will be happening soon, but like.
We'll be
People, I
talking-
think more people are here that week at the end of
I mean,
December.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with that. But you're talking about ether and ephemera, and you're not talking about realities. And so people are gonna have questions you're not gonna be able to answer, or worse, if they're gonna be answered and they're gonna be answered wrong because the real thing's coming out in January. So I'd rather deal in facts than, something that's not. But and I don't know that pulling a community forum together in 2 weeks is realistic.
It'd be lightweight.
Yeah,
Shoot for President's Weekend, there's a lot of people show for that.
MLK and presidents, I would do them both. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, I would do both 3-day weekends right around the
It
edge. of it
seems
anyway.
more practical to do something on the spur of the moment like this is a little over ambitious.
I did ask for this many months ago, Peter, so for the moment, it's, no, I'm joking, I understand.
That's just.
I understand. Okay, I mean, I take the feedback.
The other thing I wonder about, since we did get this on video, is highlighting,
Mhm.
you know, I think the chief is very powerful when he talks, and people need to think about what would happen if the trees, there's a windstorm and a fire, and it's an hour before anybody shows up. What's left could be really disastrous. And
There's a lot of fuel. We're sitting on a time
just
bomb.
understanding what we're up against. I think is a.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity to do some education
Agreed.
before the meeting.
I would just ask for Director Brown's blessing to cut that as its own separate video and put it on our website.
To what?
To cut that section of our normal meeting and put it on the website as its own standalone.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I
Get
think
that done.
linking that in our newsletter, it would be certain part of it. We did a lot of pre-read times last time. So yeah, if we wanted to do 3-day weekends in January and February, we could have that ready to go, and we'll talk about that next week in our meeting, and we can have that be the plan. Chief, if that makes sense from your perspective. So I can make that work.
But I think we should have on communications this month.
Correct.
Start.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's already slated as of now, so we're there, and the agenda will go out. So that can be our primary topic for December, and then I think for January and onwards, it will obviously continue to be this as long as it needs to be. But the other topics, as I said, opt-in, opt-out, new customer onboarding, I think would be one general area, and then the website changes. And we would stage that again. That wouldn't both start in January per se. It would just be staged over the next 12 months. And I would
We
work with
know what we're doing.
Eric that, we
Got
can
a
kind
game
of
plan.
have a game plan to stage that out over the next 12 months.
Totally agree.
Okay. All right, good.
Okay.
I just want to comment that the idea we just heard from Eric, creating a video excerpt of our minutes and posting that on the website. I love that idea. It's a great way to improve our communications, to create small, bite-sized, very relevant stuff from these meetings or similar, and then promote them. So thanks for that.
We've been trying to do more of that too in general on our FAQs and other documents, is to take blurbs and not just link to the policies, but try to cut out pieces. And I appreciate staff has been doing that. It's a lot of work, do that sort of stuff. And we really appreciate the communications perspective, how we can at least give a breadcrumb, if you will, and then link to the fuller material. And I think this is another good example of how that continues that trend.
Okay, good. So that completes item H. All right, move on to item I. Brandy, performance reporting.
Right, performance reporting. So today we have September and October numbers for you here. If we look at electric, we're running a 17% loss in September, 13% loss or unidentified usage in October, 15% year to date. These are on the high side of what we're looking for. You'll hear a little more about that with the electric master plan. But this is consistent with what we've been seeing over the past 10 years. We do typically see higher losses in the summer, fall, less high usage months. Looking at propane, you'll see what you're all familiar with now as our up and down losses in propane, September being 22%. Then we go to a negative 5% loss in October. We're averaging 4% year to date, which we normally come in somewhere between 0 and 3%.
Brandy, before you go on, is that a typo, the budgeted metering for September in electric?
I just saw that as I was walking up here. I believe it's supposed to be 303.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Thank you. Over to water. You'll see in September particularly, but then also in October, we have high district facility use. We had in those 2 months our 2 big projects going on. So the Meadow project to replace the sewer line out near Wintergreen, and then the wastewater treatment plant project also. These are estimates here. I believe that the reason the September unidentified loss is so high is because we did not capture that fully. Overall, year to date, we're looking at 20% unidentified loss in water. And then lastly, for wastewater, September and October ran at 15 and 10% respectively. And this is I&I, so extra water getting into the system. We have been, even up until this week, been continuing on repairs of the system, manhole repairs for things that have gotten damaged over the years or starting this year. So we continue to try to address I&I issues. It is something that we have slated for a project next summer to do some additional investigation in terms of smoke testing and videoing to try to focus that a bit more. For right now, year to date, we're looking at 17% for wastewater. And then there are the charts also here for aquifer levels. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
For me.
No questions. Thank you. We can move on to our favorite annual topic.
Favorite.
Jay, power source disclosure and content label. And no, we don't have any flexibility.
We do have some questions, I'm sure. We put in the same frequently asked questions. It's a theme for today.
I was just gonna say, this feels like it should go into our FAQs here too, with a link to our power label, actually.
This is an annual thing that we are required to do. The California Energy Commission requires this report from us. It is required to be on this format. I imagine that you all read through the frequently asked questions. And as I was doing that right before the meeting, I thought I missed one. And that is, if you take a look over at the power content label, which is, I think, the last page of this section. You see one more page, please. You see a percent of retail sales covered by unbundled RECs at 115%. And I don't know if anybody saw that and thought that was weird, but I thought I would explain. The RPS, the renewable portfolio system that this feeds into, is on a 4-year cycle. And so last year we had less than 100% coverage. This year we have more than 100% coverage. We're shooting for 100% because of the last electric rate study. So the reason that that number looks high is because we're putting into the same bucket for this 4-year period that ends this year, to make sure that we have 100% renewable.
So next year if that said anything other than 100%, we would be surprised because that is our goal.
No, because this lags by a year. So next year you should expect it to be high again. Because this is the 2023 power content label.
Mhm.
Next year will be the 2024 power content label. And that one is still feeding into this same period that closes in
I see.
December.
I see.
Typically, you shouldn't be too nervous if this fluctuates from year to year. The RECs we're contracted for on an annual basis through Shell, we typically don't get those deliveries until January of the following year. Sometimes it's later than that. And then we retroactively apply them to.
So as long as we're on this chart, I mean, the California average is like around 450, I think, in terms of pounds CO2 per megawatt hour. So if we're mostly unspecified power, why are we double the California average?
Because even though we're pulling off of the grid in California, the same pool,
Yeah.
all of the green attributes have been stripped off of that.
Oh, okay.
So we are getting
Right.
unknown amounts, really.
Yeah. Right.
It's really kind of interesting how this label just, I mean, it's not, I know you have to conform to the label, but I mean, it just really doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, we're buying all these racks, but we buy off the grid, so we don't know where the power came, how it was generated.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put whatever 900 as our bad score. On the other hand, we've got coverage in racks that are over 100%. I mean, the whole thing is just like,
Yeah. 952 is if there are no renewables.
Right.
yeah,
What is it? Yeah.
It is. It's hard
but it
to.
conforms with what we need to do.
Right, we are given this form and you can't
Right.
even change anything except a couple things you're allowed
So
to
it's perfectory.
input. So it is, but I agree, it is hard to look at, especially in our situation, and know what's going on.
And this is the 2023 content label.
Yes.
So it's the calendar year 2023. Okay.
And that
All
is all I have on that one also.
Could I ask, please?
Please.
So essentially, I mean, the 99% unspecified has always been striking. We simply, PG&E can't, or is it CalISO or PG&E can't tell us anything about the source of the power that they send, right?
It's the ISO, that's correct. And the way we are currently operating, that is correct. Where we get our power is unknown. It would be possible to contract directly with known suppliers to change that and get things like large hydro or natural gas. But when we've looked at that, it's been significantly more expensive because our loads are so small, that previously the board has decided that we're going to cover that through this purchase of RECs.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. On the screen is this set of related question answers. They're great and they're helpful. I didn't recognize them from our general FAQ that we talked about 15 minutes ago. They're not in there, isn't that true?
That's true. These we just put together specifically for this annual report to the board.
Great. Well,
Look at this.
next
It's
a year
posted on
from
our website. I don't think we've ever gotten a call.
I've never heard
about-
it's discussed outside of,
Yeah. Our
Once a year here.
Our
Yeah.
annual complaint session. Yeah.
Well, this is the previous agenda item, so forgive me, but as I often say in the communications committee, my view of frequently asked questions is they don't necessarily have to be asked frequently. If they're on people's minds, and we know that they are, just from conversation and you talking to people, that they have interest in how and where we get our energy. It's just always helpful to have this kind of good quality question answer content find its way to the knowledge base that I think we want people to have access to. So even if we don't get a lot of phone calls at 4444 to ask this question, doesn't mean it's not good stuff. I'll get off the soapbox.
We'll have a new section, questions you've never asked. And that'll probably get a lot of people looking. There you go. Okay, so
Like the
regulations.
IAQ, the infrequently, or NAQ, never ask
Never
questions.
asked questions, right?
Um,
Okay.
We do need approval of this.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm
Motion
sorry.
to approve.
Shredder motions.
Schroeder.
Tonda seconds.
Okay, roll call.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitteranda,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Okay, and now regulation 620.
So this went
0.03.
through the operations committee. We know we have some outdated regulations. We don't have time to go through them one by one. It would take us 6 months of solid work between Rick, Brandy, and myself. And so as things come up, we are updated. As you can see, this is 25 years old, over 25 years old since it was last updated. And so the policies and practices of this board are no longer reflected by this policy, as well as some general cleanup and new industry standards. So happy to answer any questions on why things changed, if there are any. If not, I would recommend adoption.
Are there any specific questions on the markup?
No, the ops committee went through it and I think we recommended
Right.
the changes, right?
All right.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Not Doug, motion to approve.
Okay.
Tonda seconds.
All right.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitteranda,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Okay. Electric master plan.
We finally got the master plan completed, which we're thrilled about. We did go back and have the maps updated, which was a question the last time this was before the board. Those are updated with staff's comments and in the copy that you have in your packet.
Randy, sorry to interrupt. Is it true that this was last before the board, maybe summer of 23, or that's the only one I found?
It was
right?
it was November of 23. I believe it was right before you took your seat.
Okay, right, late 23. Thank you. Go ahead.
We did talk about this at operations also, and went through some questions. I don't know if anyone has specific questions or if you want to hit these again, but I'm happy to do it either way.
The impression I had is this is kind of a good read for anybody who's a board member, because I learned a lot about what the infrastructure was that I didn't know, even though I've been hanging around here for quite a few years. And then the other one is the capital plan on page 175 that probably requires some sort of board review and recommendation on how we've got a $521,000 expense coming up for 24-25 that we probably need to put on a board agenda sometime. Do we want to do it out of reserves, or do we want to finance, or
Well, and is that timing what we want to do or not?
can you get it done by then? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there no backup route if that wire fails?
Sort of.
We could backfeed through a different circuit, but it's less than ideal. The circuits are fairly well balanced as they are, and if we end up doing that, which we could,
I just meant in an emergency.
in an emergency, we would backfeed it.
Yeah.
Can I ask about peak load? I think it's page 9 or packet page 140. It looks like, are you with me?
Yeah.
Give me a second. There's a lot of pages here.
I noticed. So it looked, first of all, one question is, and I imagine this came up way back, a year ago in November when we talked about it, but why does the Cross Canyon choose a weekday to measure peak loads as opposed to, I don't know, MLK Day or something, when I would imagine we'd be at real peak?
So the peaks here are they're recorded on the feeder relays at the powerhouse.
Yep.
So this just happened to be the peak in the
Oh.
period that they were looking
This was-
at.
Okay, so this was the peak. It was more than on any holiday or Sunday or what have you.
Right, and I didn't look back at specifically what was happening that day, but we do tend to see in the holiday periods, if it's powder day, we could see high loads, or if there's snowmaking, which could also affect it.
Okay, I just read that sentence under the chart on page 9 to say we chose a typical weekday. And it wasn't clear to me that they had actually chosen the peak day. And then it also says that never do the 3 feeds. If I read this right, there's a feed for the lifts, which is the biggest, then for commercial, and then for residential. Never are the 3 sort of firing simultaneously or peaking simultaneously. I'm sure they don't necessarily peak simultaneously, but uh, I would think I would think that when it's busy at Kirkwood, it's busy on all 3 feeds, and when it's not, like in May, the opposite.
That is true. Certainly all of the feeds tend to rise and fall together. Lifts being the potential exception to that, because on the lift feed, you have almost all of the chairlifts and almost all of the snowmaking infrastructure. And either of those things could happen independent of the other. But as far as the peak of each feed, what the report is saying is that, we'll see the lift feed peak at 11 a.m. Whereas the residential peak is usually around 6 in the evening.
Okay, so on this chart, table 1, the total is roughly 4.4 megawatts. But I guess that's maybe an irrelevant total because it's not simultaneous. The feeds aren't simultaneous. A couple of pages later, page 12, it puts, if I understand this right, Kirkwood's peak load, well, actually, they call it Out Valley peak load, is 3.28. So what is our peak load?
That is the highest that we have seen since the PUD has been in charge of electricity.
Are you asking peak load or capacity?
No, peak load. I thought our capacity is somewhere around 4.5 and our access is around 10.
So 3.28 is the highest that we've seen, and highest actual load.
Okay.
When we modeled the Out Valley line, we were modeling at closer to 5 megawatts, which is what the nameplate capacity of the powerhouse is. The actual capacity is closer to 3 megawatts, and then the capacity of the Out Valley line is 10 megawatts.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the capacity, we have the potential to tap into 10 megawatts on the line. We currently are rated or plated at 5. Is that the same powerhouse number? Let's see. Earlier there was a comment about you might think it's 5, but it's really more like 2.9. John Schroeder mentioned that earlier in the meeting. Am I mixing 2 things up or?
No, that's right. So the Out Valley capacity is the capacity that we have on our electric infrastructure if we are connected to the grid. If the Out Valley line is up and running, we have 10 megawatts of capacity.
Yeah.
If that line is down for maintenance or emergency, we're regulated to what we can produce at the powerhouse.
Right, that's the
nameplate of
Volvos.
that's 5, and yes, the actual is about 3.
Okay, so when we say Out Valley train, that's basically transmission capacity coming into Kirkwood when everything's going fine. We're rated to take roughly 5, but we've never done more than 3.3. And it's a totally different story, though. The point about the Volvos being a constraint, the Volvo generators, that is a statement, correct me if I'm wrong, but that statement is essentially your Volvos cannot do 5. They do more like 2 point, something under 3. Do I have that right? Could you clarify, please?
The powerhouse has 3 Caterpillar generators, each rated at 950 kilowatts, so about a meg each, and 5 Volvo generators that are rated at 430 kilowatts each. And the Volvos aren't reliable. So in all practicality, when we're talking about generation from the powerhouse, we're looking at a realistic ability to produce about 3 megs of power.
3 megs of power with the Volvos and the other
It's the cats, not the
Yeah,
Volvos.
the cats, we use the cats, we hardly ever turn on the Volvos.
Okay, got it. Got it. And ideally, I mean, and we only use those in emergency, really, because that same powerhouse is typically pulling in from the transmission grid.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Where does this all, I mean, where does this all stand? Where does this leave us? What is, the Cross Canyon's been working with us since before my time. Is this their final report? How does this play into a master plan?
This is a master plan.
This is it.
Yes.
Okay. How do we assess it? Do we like the plan? The plan basically says we're, if I read it right, we're in very stable, good shape. And that both in transmission and capacity and in local distribution and in emergency powerhouse, although please don't use the Volvos. It makes it seem like we're in great shape.
I think one of the key outputs of this is page 175, which says, what are the capital improvements required over a 10-year period to be successful with the operation?
Weren't those pretty modest CapEx requirements? I can't remember, but they weren't.
There's a big one in
Big
there.
one. Yeah, it's
And we leave off the chair 4 because someone else would pay for that when it gets
Correct.
done.
Not our.
Right, because we don't know.
it's over $500,000, so it's
Yeah. Okay, that's here, right? Yeah.
Well, when we discussed this in ops, which was quite a while ago, the main thing we took away is as we look, there's 2 things to watch for. One is as demand grows, which is most likely, level 3 chargers. If those ever happen, we need to have ability to curtail in the event of losing the out valley. That's one big takeaway. The second one is if we want to provide as we get demand growing because we have more residences and other things, we want to look at having more capacity in the powerhouse so we have a fail-safe switch over. Those were the 2 big takeaways I took from
level
that.
3 was addressed here, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can handle it. We know where we can, whatever, but we can't handle it when there's an out valley outage. We need to have the ability to curtail in those contracts. And those are huge power sinks.
Now level 3.
The level 3 chargers. We currently have 0. But if as we have them, we need to think through what those agreements look like.
I'm only familiar with level 1 and level 2. I know they described it in the document, but I could not make out. Is a level 3 only something that would feed multiple chargers? Like
No, level 3 charger is over 40 kilowatt hours.
If I want to pay for a level 3 in my garage,
No, you would never do that. You would only do it if you're charging your 3 Teslas at once. Sort of
in half.
It's only going to be a commercial charger where you're trying to get the majority of your charge in an hour or less.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm asking is, Eric, do we permit or allow people to put in level 3?
With the switching that would be able to curtail their usage, should we have to go onto the powerhouse? Yes, we could, but no one's seriously put forward to do them because the amount of power they draw, the connection fees are just kill the project almost immediately. That's the old connection fees.
Sorry to need a little remedial here, but for residents that put in a level 2, do they have to notify PUD or not?
They're supposed to. And if they go through the county building departments, that usually comes to us. It's behind the meter, so unless it's going to mean that they have to upsize their panel or upsize a transformer, there's typically little that we would do. But we do like to be notified so that, you know, in the case of other issues in that part of the circuit, that we know what equipment is where.
Randy, do you and the team have a sense that people comply, or do you have a sense that there are a lot of rogue level twos that don't inform us, or we don't know?
I don't know for sure. It's fairly easy to buy and install your own charger, though. I don't know of any that are out there, but it can be done. And so it wouldn't surprise me if some people have gotten these installed without us knowing.
That's on the level of like putting in an electric dryer. You know,
Yeah.
it's not.
Single phase 220,
It's like
Yeah.
changing out your water heater. You're supposed to pull a building permit.
Yeah.
Almost no one does.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But level 3, I think, Eric, you just said this. Level 3 is not the case, though. You would definitely know it. They'd be big trouble if someone tried to put a level 3 in without telling PUD.
No one could put a level
We would
3
notice.
in. You can't put it in your garage, Chris. It's not what
Okay.
you're thinking. It's if you've ever been to Jackson and seen by Mel's and seen that bank of Tesla chargers, those are level 3s.
Each one of them,
Each one of them.
multiple level 3s.
Yes.
Not one level 3 feeding lots of different chargers.
No, multiple
Okay,
level
thank you.
3s.
Okay, thank you. So earlier, someone said there's one big CapEx item in all this. My eyes just went to the $800,000 and didn't see any 7-figure thing. What is the big pop? What's the big pop on this CapEx?
It's the one that's on the screen right now. It's a replace
Yeah.
direct buried primary line, 500,000.
500K. What's wrong with me? I don't see it. I'm looking at the screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Wrong screen. Thank you. Yeah.
What do we need to do with this? We need to approve it or?
I think we should adopt it. Yes.
Yeah.
Before we vote, could I simply ask, as far as the master plan process, in approving or adopting a master plan, that then what does that trigger? What comes from this?
It will help craft the budgets every year.
Okay, good. Thank
Also
you.
lets us know what in the system, if Martin Point developed, for example, that tells us where the weaknesses in electrical and ultimately when that one's done, and ultimately wastewater are in the system that would be triggered if that development ever built. So it serves a lot of purposes.
Yeah. And the 500,000 is the bulk of the number, and it's soon. I can't remember. Is that in our CapEx budget that we talked about, or this would be new?
It is, but it's not on this time frame. This spreadsheet should have been updated one more fiscal year, but like you said, he started it over a year ago. And so it's an out of date. That should be 25, 26 for discussion by the board.
Okay, so this particular item is, if I looked at the CapEx budget, is
It's in there.
Under FY 20.
I don't know what year it is in our capital budget, but it is in there.
Okay,
And
but
the dollars may be different because this is their numbers versus what we guessed it at.
okay, but these are only guidelines. I mean, they're not the recommendations at a point in time.
All multi-year capital plans are a plan.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good, thank you very
until you approve the project and put it out for bid.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You don't
Yeah.
know.
Everything's a plan until you get punched in the face.
Thanks, Mike.
That's Mike. Yeah.
Okay,
Mike
so are you
Maloney.
ready?
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, and that would be John.
Yeah.
Okay,
I second.
okay. Seconded by Chris. Roll call, please.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. Major project updates?
Major project updates. We have the first draft of the propane master plan. So we are reviewing that now. So we'll be bringing that back to the board and then taking that next step into the rate study after that comes back. So we should have that before the board probably January, I think, Brandy, and ops probably as well. So that is coming back. So that is done. The water master plan, as I talked about briefly, or maybe it was Rick one of us talked about it last time we met. The state is requiring us to come up with a engineered plan for what to do with some secondary water hits we're getting on our wells. And so we've just executed a amendment to the contract with Peterson Brewstead, who's doing the water master plan, which will delay the water master plan slightly, but it is only slightly delayed. So that is underway as well. It will be finished in probably first quarter of next year. That was a new development. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to add unless there's any questions about the projects.
I always need to remember, these are calendar quarters, is that right? Q4.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
I just had to look at it real quick and make sure.
I've asked that before. You might want to just note somewhere it says calendar. But
We got
Okay.
propane and water, wastewater. rate
Yeah.
studies.
Yep.
Yeah. Water rate study is waiting on the water master plan. We're going to have to go without the wastewater master plan just because we're going to have to go without it because there's too much work. And as we talked about, it was 650,000 out of scope, and we're going to have to deal with that next budget. And Brandy and Rick and I have come up with a plan to deal with that, which is we'll talk about again, but it is to hire 2 temporary seasonals to do all the smoke testing and all the cammering over the course of the summer, which would be significantly less than $650,000.
Oh.
Significantly less.
I'll apply.
Yeah.
Eric, when you say we'll have to go without, that means rate study without master plan. Is that what that means?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? General manager's report then?
I think we've covered everything. And in the interest of going to cut lemons and limes and things downstairs, I don't really have anything to add unless there's any questions.
Okay, Rick, operations report?
Operations report.
One thing with NAFTA major projects update, we want to talk about Stantec and the $250,000 savings we're gonna have for O&M manuals that Brain's gonna do.
Not yet.
Okay. To
Doesn't
be
wanna jinx
to be
it.
announced. But we're looking at ways to save money and do some things in-house, which will help staff tremendously understand what's going on with our new wastewater treatment plant. For operations, just briefly, snow removal team is in place. We have a full crew, a lot of return employees, but there are some new employees. And so during the first few storms, there's some, patterns weren't exactly perfect, meaning that we weren't going stake to stake in some of the driveways because the operators were learning. But as we go along, things will get more polished, as you can imagine. We dodged a bullet with the atmospheric rivers kind of going around Kirkwood. We were sort of a dry island. And so it was a perfect way to train new staff and get caught up. All the equipment seems to be running. We had our newest thermal machine go down for about 2 hours because of 30 amp fuse. So we learned something about that machine that we didn't know.
Is that M1?
M1, yeah. Was sitting up on Sorrel for a little while there. But all in all, I'm really pleased with how snow removal's begun and the communication with the HOAs and the change in our policy and our contracts have been working out well.
All I can say is from a KMA resident, it looks a lot better than it did last year.
Good.
Yeah, you're the second one to tell us that, which is nice.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really have nothing more to report other than appreciate Brandy keeping the staff moving and are busy during this dry period, especially we had a very busy winter or summer, And the summer project list, a lot of things got done this year compared to years past. So compliments to her and her crew. And she's still keeping the people busy now with snow removal, with other projects like replacing the manhole that recently got damaged by Vale. And so, yeah, thanks for that. But that concludes my report unless there's any questions from the board.
I don't see any.
Thanks.
Okay, standing committee reports. John, you want to go first?
I don't have anything to add. We're kind of anxiously waiting the audit.
Right. Okay, Doug?
So communications, I think, is well covered. Other details are in the reports in the packet. IT did not meet.
Right.
And then,
We'll have a meeting in December.
Yeah.
Okay, and personnel did not meet.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Chris? Anything to
Well,
add?
the planning committee had a very active November. I'd like to take the next 20 minutes to give you the highlights of our various debates and accomplishments, and I am just kidding.
Okay. Temporary advisory committees, there aren't any, and LAFCO is in mystery mode. Okay. General board discussion. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up?
Could I please bring up the packet and any ideas, unless I'm the only one with this view, on how to streamline it? The packet this month, as everybody knows, was about 170 something pages, and in addition, 170 pages in the what is it called? The special CFD discussion prior. And from my point of view, it's very hard to know. I mean, obviously we can't read 200, 300 pages very carefully, and it's hard to know how to prioritize. It's hard to know, for me at least, which items on the agenda are the most important or the ones that are going to likely take the most discussion. Is one item likely to be 5 minutes and another one 30 minutes? I wonder whether we could, is there any way to, well, it smacks of editorializing, but point out, point our attention to certain agenda items or even certain parts of the packet so that we can be better prepared for these meetings. I didn't, for example, read that, I think it was the penultimate item on a sewage contract. Oh, no, that's just one example where I don't know how much time to spend on each topic. Any thoughts on that? Am I the only one?
I think so.
Wow.
I mean, one thing I would say is that we have talked about trying to get the packets out earlier.
And it came out early.
Yeah, it came out early this time, and finance moving to the cadence it was part of that, to get some of the things out earlier. And I would just say more that we can, and as we think about agendas and get it out earlier, I mean, that would be the thing I would say, just to give us maybe a couple more days.
Yeah, that's anything under control is to try to do it as early, or
Yeah.
if something's being delayed, do whatever is available. But it came out a day early this time, and that was appreciated. It gave me enough time to finish reading it.
Probably the one thing I do both with finance committee and with this is I'll shoot an email to Eric and say, hey, what about this? What about that? That if I don't want to use everybody in the room's time on something, but I want to know something, I'll just do it offline. And I think it ends up being 1 minute for me and 1 minute for you. Yeah, absolutely. So that's helpful for me.
Well, maybe I'll defer the question for later or take it offline, but just as an example, item 9K, regulation 620.03 was a document with no prelude or staff recommendation. Those, by the way, are very helpful, those one-pagers. But sometimes, you get them, sometimes you don't. And I'm really impressed that everyone's reading that sewage contract. I didn't know from what perspective even to be looking at it.
I think that's what you get when you sign up to run for a board. It's your responsibility. It's like a job. Job's to read the packets and make policy decisions.
It is true that that's one that didn't have a summary at the beginning. Okay,
You do
but
get a
I'm,
feel for things,
I-
kind of perfunctory and which things
Yeah.
have meat on them. And then for me, numbers jump out at me, like if I see 521,000, I go, whoa, you know. Gotta put some thought into that, right?
yeah, but I'm going to ask for,
You're not
yes.
going to adjourn yet because I'm going to say thank you to Bob for serving as our president for the last 3 years. And
Appreciate it.
I appreciate the guidance he has given me to hopefully take over and do a admirable job going forward as the board president
Oh,
in
thank you.
January. So I just want to say thank you to Bob for his time and his service and continued service, of course. But thank you again for all you've
That's
done.
very kind of you. I appreciate that very much.
And the one question on the date, we want to make sure everybody's going to be here, so we have a forum physically on January 3rd for the next meeting.
Right, that is the
I know Doug will
question.
be here, I know you'll be here. John, okay, so we have a physical quorum, Peter's always here, so.
I'm gonna be in Tahiti.
You liar, you can't ski at Tahiti.
Okay, all right, so we have a
That sounds
forum
good, yeah.
for
staff-
January 3rd.
Some staff will be here, so I'll be here for sure.
Yeah. Okay, good. A motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn. Minutana motions to adjourn.
second,
Schroeder second.
okay,
All right, Epstein,
aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Tuger,
Aye.
Thornburg. I'm gonna abstain on this one.
All right, okay, we'll see. Okay, thank you all.
When the party started?
I got